banks which are under PCA, 11 of them, they really need this kind of support. What's the counter argument to this? Because, Reserve Bank always has been very cautious in terms of the prudential norms that it follows. And I suppose that is one of the reasons why, we have been able to withstand at least, some of the contagions so far. So just trying to balance it out.
So there, as I said, it's a matter of taking a balanced view. The economy needs to grow, it needs credit, and we have had certain incidents in the past where excessive creation of credit led to problems, especially during the 2006 to 2013 period. So it is not the case that we are unaware of the dangers of excessive creation of capital. But also we need to, on the other hand, take into account the fact that any growing economy requires capital. And now, currently, we have had recently tightness in the credit markets and with NBFCs, as you're aware. So we need to take all of this into account in order to make sure that credit keeps flowing for the legitimate needs of the economy, particularly for NBFCs. Which obviously do not have the kinds of access to credit markets or external markets that maybe a larger corporation may have.
How do you view that segment right now? Is the crisis over, or are there still a lot of pickups that we can expect probably over the next couple of months? What's your take? Just recently, the MCA has come out with a complete analysis of the sector, particularly talking about the HFCs and the credit crunch over there.
So certainly the NBFC sector did go through a period where it felt some pressure. It was triggered a couple of months ago with, if you will remember, the episode with ILFS. Government acted quite quickly and ring-fenced the particular issue. We have also helped replace the management, and for the time being that issue has been isolated. However, despite that, it did feed through to the credit markets, and for a period of time there was a problem with rollovers and so on for many NBFCs and HFCs. The government was aware of this, and we did take several steps in order to get the liquidity situation better, including, of course, steps by the National Housing Bank. The Reserve Bank is also aware of the matter, and they took several steps to ease up liquidity, as you would have noticed. And the latest information is that the situation has very significantly abated. So while it has not completely been unwound, but I would say from the situation it was maybe a week or two ago, I would say the rollover issue is now much easier. So I would argue that this particular episode was taken care of, and we are now on the other side of it.
Right, but do you think this is also the time right now, I mean, to basically look at the players which are really sound, with good solid balance sheets, or with, strong parents behind them to support them?
So one of the things here was that it was not a solvency problem, it was a liquidity problem, and I think this needs to be stressed. There were several of the institutions that were having difficulty rolling over actually have decent balance sheets, decent assets on those balance sheets, but there were asset liability mismatches, and once that episode with ILFS happened, it caused a disruption in the wider market, which meant that even those who had till very recently having no difficulty rolling over their debt suddenly found that they were unable to do this. And as happens with these things, they tend to spiral out. So that was what was going on. So therefore the government stepped in at multiple levels, and also so did the Reserve Bank. And as I said, that spiraling effect has now stopped, and we are now spiraling in the other direction, and the whole system is liquefying again.
Okay, fine. Also on this particular thing, I mean, without getting into any names, but I will mention some of the names. So the names that we've been spoken about were like Divan Housing and like PNB Housing, and also like to an extent the IB Group. I'm sure that without getting into too many names, I as a journalist can mention that. You think that the problem was mainly limited to these big active players, at least two of them, and it was not very generalized, it was not very,
So first of all, I can't comment on any names, as you will very much appreciate. But the problem in these situations is not the specific institution that may be facing stress, which is why we acted so quickly on ILFS. The problem happens that it suddenly very quickly it spirals out and causes stress to even those who may be otherwise perfectly good institutions. And then it sort of, yes, then you have a domino effect, which comes back, by the way, since it's a spiral, it comes back to the original institution, which then feeds back through. So this feedback loop that you have can then spiral into various directions. So while some institutions may be better off than others, in these situations, once the spiral out, if it happens, can be quite indiscriminate. So that is why you have to nip it in the bud fairly early on, and that is why we took care to ring fence ILFS fairly early on, and then we made such a lot of effort, as you may have noticed, about making sure there's adequate liquidity, backstopping in various ways through NHB and other institutions, and so on and so forth. And we continue, incidentally, to monitor it. So although things have improved dramatically, it is not the case that we have taken our eye off the ball.
Right. Okay. Also, so now just going back to the issue of, Dr. Viral Acharya's speech, which came out some time ago, a lot of references have been made, T20 versus a test match versus, whatever. Probably analogies are being, drawn up, and it's always interesting to have a healthy debate. What would be your view on certain aspects over here? I mean, this is of course in lighter vein.
Well, I think too much is drawn up on personalities. Dr. Viral Acharya is a personal friend, so I'm sure he will not mind my intellectual disagreement with him. The fact is that a cricketing analogy of this kind may not quite play well to policy making, because to say a T20 versus test cricket in a policy environment requires that you actually know which bit is the short run and which is the long run. See, it comes from a sort of intellectual framework where you have some sort of an equilibrium trend line which is in the long run, and there are these short deviations from it in the short run. And then there is a clear difference between the two. Now, in real world, it may not actually be clear which bit is the short run and which is the long run. When you're maybe later on, when you're doing some academic analysis of it, you may be able to distinguish between the long and short. But in real time, you can't, especially if, at least my worldview is, or that the world is a complex adaptive system which is prone to spiraling up and down. It is prone to hysteresis. Just to explain what a hysteresis is a phenomena where a short-term shock can throw the path off completely, and then you go down another path. So in that case, the short-term shock actually gives you a new long-term path. There is no equilibrium trend line to which you are drifting back. So the problem in that is that you have to real-time respond to situations and make judgments without actually knowing which is the long-term and the short-term. Now, going back to the cricketing analogy that Viral used, think of it as playing a match without knowing whether this is a T20 or a test, or at which random point you're going to have the Duckworth-Lewis imposed on you. That is the actual situation in which you are when you are making real-time policy. So I would say that this mechanical view of distinguishing between T20 and test may not be quite an appropriate analogy.
Cool. So also 19th is the next central bank board meet. Expectation of key issues getting resolved, because we were given to understand also that probably in the previous meeting some decisions had actually been taken, but we did not see them coming through, so to speak.
So I am not a member of the board.
Yeah.
There are two government nominees, the Secretary for Financial Services and the Secretary for Economic Affairs.
Sure.
They will be better able to comment on this.
Right. And so one last a quick one, end of the month you will be having your Q2 GDP numbers. What is the state of the economy? I mean, very briefly, if you look at the key indicators.
The growth was accelerating. You got a particularly strong number of 8.2, the last reading. As I commented at that time, there will be a base effect that will bring the number somewhat lower. Now you can take a guess of how much that will be, but it will still be a very, very strong number because even after accounting for the base effect of the last time, the number was very strong. So this time too it will be strong, but I would not be surprised if the headline year-on-year number is the growth rate. It comes down somewhat from the last time.
Comes down?
Yes, I mean, I don't think it, I'll be very, very surprised if it came out again at 8.2 or something thereabouts.
Okay, you're talking about the Q2?
Yeah, so I would be surprised, it comes
around
down.
8%, 7.9 to 8-ish.
Whatever, it will come down to somewhat below, but it will be still a very strong number. And it will actually be quite good because this number cannot be blamed, you can't blame base effects and other things on it.
Right, Dr. Sanyal, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving time to CNBC-TV18.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.